The Chargers have finally broken Justin Herbert, and I don't say that metaphorically. I mean that literally. He's out for the remainder of this season with a broken finger. And it had me thinking, going into this season, I wasn't that high on the Chargers, but many people felt this could have been the year they at least could have been a playoff team and maybe win a playoff game or two. But they've been a massive disappointment. And what went wrong with the Chargers this season, and why have they failed their star quarterback? Well, firstly, we got to go to the ownership's decision after they lost in the wild card round to Jacksonville, allowing them to come from behind and win that game, to bring back Brandon Staley. And most of us knew that it was a terrible decision to give Brandon Staley another year. They could have went out and traded for Sean Payton. They could have maybe made an attempt at trying to get Jim Harbaugh last offseason, but they opted to give Brandon Staley another year, and it backfired in their face massively. Not only is Brandon Staley one of the worst head coaches in the NFL, but he's also not good on the defense side of the football neither. The defense hasn't been great. It has played well the last few weeks, but that's not really saying much because it's not really equating to wins. And anytime this defense is in a big spot against a great team and they need a big stop to win the game, they normally don't get it done. And anytime you got a bad head coach, a big red flag or a tall tale sign that your head coach isn't good is when he specializes in one area of the football, and that's the worst aspect of the team, that being the defense. Plus, he refuses to give over play calling duties. That's another red flag. He's super aggressive or ultra conservative in fourth down situations. He doesn't really have a good feel for the game. Bad clock management, doesn't make good in-game adjustments. So bringing back Brandon Staley obviously was a terrible decision by the LA Chargers organization. Another thing that went wrong with the Chargers this year was they hired Kellen Moore to be their new offensive coordinator. Now, their previous offensive coordinator was a problem because he was too conservative. He wouldn't allow Justin Herbert to let it rip, didn't really take a lot of shots downfield. It was a pretty conservative, quick passing game offense that the Chargers were running previously before Kellen Moore arrived. Kellen Moore gets there, and you expect this offense to be more explosive. And for the first few weeks of this season, it looked like this offense was going to be vastly improved compared to what it was in previous years. But Kellen Moore's offense hasn't been any better than the previous OC's offense. Justin Herbert has taken a massive decline in performance under Kellen Moore. So not only was the decision to bring back Brandon Staley terrible, but hiring Kellen Moore, that hasn't went in their favor as well. And then the run game. The run game has been the biggest Achilles heel for the Chargers ever since they first drafted Justin Herbert. They haven't had a legitimate rushing attack with him at quarterback ever. And Austin Eckler, he's a really good running back, but he's definitely having signs of regression. He hasn't played at the same level this season as we've seen him play in the past. At one point, it got so bad that the Chargers had to go out there and promote their other running backs behind him, giving them more carries than Austin Eckler. And they ranked dead last or near the bottom of the NFL in rushing yards per game last year. And they haven't really made any more improvement this season with Kellen Moore being the OC. So you failed Justin Herbert by whiffing at your offensive coordinator hire, bringing back Brandon Staley. You still don't have a legitimate rushing attack to take some of the pressure off of Justin Herbert. You see, Justin Herbert is good enough to carry you to a win. But when you're up, you need to be able to run the football to take time off the clock. And that's something that the Chargers don't do a good job at being able to do. Plus, they get too overly reliant on the passing attack. We know how good Justin Herbert is, but at the same time, you got to throw the defense off by throwing different things at them. If the defense knows that you're just going to go air raid for the whole entire game, it's going to make things a lot more difficult, not just on you as a play caller, but for Justin Herbert, because those pass rushers get to pin their ears back and they don't really have to worry about the threat of the run game. When you don't play complimentary football, you put your quarterback in a disadvantage. The Chargers don't need to be a dominant rushing team. They just have to be able to run the football when they want to, and they haven't had the luxury of being able to do that over the last few years. And then another big failure for the Chargers this season was that they drafted a wide receiver and Quentin Johnston in the first round out of TCU, and he's been a massive bust. The dude has had several drops in big moments. He isn't dependable. He doesn't run good routes. He looks clumsy when he's out there. Mike Williams goes down, and you expect Quentin Johnston, your first round pick, to be able to fill his shoes perfectly. He's a big body wide receiver, really athletic, but he doesn't play up to his size. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 200 and something pounds, but plays like he's a 5'10" slot receiver that only weighs 170 pounds. The decision to draft Quentin Johnston when they could have potentially drafted JSN or Tank Dell, who got drafted in the later rounds. Even Josh Downs, the rookie wide receiver for Indianapolis, has been better than Quentin Johnston. If they would have drafted any other productive wide receiver that was drafted out after Quentin Johnston, this offense would have been in a much better situation. This offense only ran through two people, Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, when he was healthy. So you don't really give Justin Herbert a lot of great options to throw the football to. You give him no run game. You give him an offensive coordinator that's worse than what he had previously, and a head coach that's a doofus, especially late in games. This was a complete recipe for disaster. And this isn't the only time the Chargers have failed Justin Herbert. They failed him in previous years. When Anthony Lynn was his head coach, they failed to give him a great supporting cast or a good coaching staff that could potentially help him elevate and get this franchise to a Super Bowl. And Brandon Staley, you thought when he first hired Kellen Moore that this was a home run hire. But now you're starting to see all the reasons why the Dallas Cowboys gave this dude the pink slip. Dallas offense still is one of the best in the NFL, and the Chargers offense this season has been one of the biggest disappointments this year. There's been more explosive plays in the passing game that we've seen out of Herbert this year compared to previously. But this offense, anytime they're going up against a great defense, they don't do anything. They got bottled up by the Ravens. They didn't do too much against the Dallas Cowboys. Seattle put over 30 on Dallas defense. And Seattle's offense, from a personnel standpoint, isn't anywhere better than what the LA Chargers have. Their receivers are better, but the Chargers have a better offensive line and just as talented as a wide receiver group as what the Seattle Seahawks have, even without not having Mike Williams on the field. The Chargers failed Justin Herbert in a big way in 2023. And I'm kind of happy that we don't have to see this dude start any more games for the Chargers this year, because it pretty much was pointless. All you was doing was setting this dude up to fail. You got people calling him overrated on Twitter, when really it's not Justin Herbert's fault that the Chargers have been unable to have a lot of success over the last couple of years. It's mainly due in part to this ownership not being willing to spend big money to get a big-time head coach. You got a head coach right now in Brandon Staley that isn't good when it comes to calling plays on the side of the ball that he specializes in, and you whiffed on your offensive coordinator hire who is supposed to help Justin Herbert take his game to the next level. The Chargers failed their franchise quarterback. This isn't the first time they failed their franchise quarterback. They failed Phillip Rivers for countless years. Justin Herbert is out for the remainder of this season. I don't wish injuries upon any player, but I'm glad that now Justin Herbert does have to take another snap under this terrible coaching staff and Brandon Staley.